We talked about, and you highlighted the NFL draft class from Miami from a negative standpoint, from a positive standpoint, or to flip it again, actually a negative standpoint for 2024. Who's going to be the most missed player that departed this team?
Cameron Kinchens. Not even close. I mean, James Williams is more of a physical presence, or was in the secondary and everything, but you had a first-team All-American 2 years ago, the player who led all of college football in interceptions over the last 2 years, the heart and soul of the defense, the defensive quarterback. Now, he was able to let Kiko Mawanoa lead a little bit more as the middle linebacker, but still, everybody said it, as Cam goes, this defense goes, or went last year, and yeah, I mean, are there more physically talented guys? Yeah, I think that Leonard Taylor was more physically talented. He clearly had issues with his motor and motivation and consistency of play. James Williams, my God, is way more physically talented than Cam Kinchens could ever dream of being. Even a guy like a Tyler Harrell, he wasn't really good, but I mean, if healthy, that 4.3 flat straight line speed again can play up athletically in a way that Cam Kinchens is just kind of average in terms of being like a professional athlete, right? I know you're looking at me like, well, Cam, you need to lose a bunch of weight and you're rotund. Yeah, blah 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 blah. But in terms of NFL athletes, Cam Kinchens is pretty regular, but his impact on Miami Hurricanes in so many ways was just incredibly valuable, even admitting that he made some mistakes. That Georgia Tech game, bit on that double move. There was another couple times that he, took the eye candy and he went for the first, they're running double posts, and he went for the first post, and then the second post gets behind him and goes to score. Not saying he was a perfect player. Not at all. But yeah, he's the guy off of the roster that I think Miami will miss the most. You get a reasonable facsimile replacement of Colby Young with Sam Brown, a little bit shorter, not as good as contested catches, but somebody who'd had more than 800 yards last year coming in from Houston. So you replace pretty much like with like, not exactly the same, but I think that the positive trait profiles are there. In terms of running back, you upgrade from Henry Parrish, all due respect to Henry Parrish, getting Damian Martinez, first team all Pac-12, over two guys who got drafted in the top 3 rounds at running back, by the way. You know what I mean? So that even validates that more. I think that you've seen guys come in and replace some of the other guys outgoing. You could potentially shift around the offensive line to cover for Javion Cohen. You already have your replacement for Matt Lee in Zach Carpenter, who came from Indiana, things like that. So, yeah, I think that the only answer here for me is Cam Kinchens as being the one to miss the most. Again, admitting that there were other good players, other players who played 4 and 5 and 600 snaps, and also admitting that Cam Kinchens is nobody's perfect player and made mistakes along the way. But yeah, he has to be the answer there.
We take your comments and questions, everyone, and Cam is so gracious to join us each and every Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern time. Bring it when we talk about comments and questions. We are wide open. So let me throw this one out there until I see something from the chat. Who do you think is doing the best job as an assistant coach on this staff?
Ooh. Good question. I think Lance Guidry, defensive coordinator and now safeties coach as well. Played safety and coach safety, on his way up the ranks. So fine with him taking a position and with coordinating. But Faced some challenging times last year, head on, adapted his process. Even we started going, having to deal with a lot of injuries, especially along the defensive line. That's where that 3-3-5 kind of started coming in, and you started having the same Mawanoa and Cloyd, excuse me, all starting at linebacker together. And the thing for me, man, like pretty much invariably throughout the year, had a really good feel for when the team needed him to call a defensive timeout. And during that timeout, having the right answer. And I point again to that Clemson game. I've said it many times, but in the fourth quarter, down late, called a timeout, got into the right defense, made a stop, boom, boom, whatever, go to overtime. Before that fourth in the ball game, in overtime, called that timeout in the press box in my same row next to, Brandon O'Doy and Brian the Beast London. And we're talking about it. And I said, hold on, wait. The most recent data point that we have was about 8 minutes ago. This man called a timeout. He was dialed into what they were doing, so he'd watched the film, done the opponent study, knew what their tendencies said, dialed up the right thing, and we got the stop. So I'm going to trust that he's going to do the same thing, and did the same thing. And then when Corey Flagg Jr. was there, like trusty Trent, just doing his job. And then, Cade Klubnik, who should have given that ball, by the way, that probably would have scored, but trying to do hero ball, and he stepped out to the left, and then all of a sudden he saw Flag right there break down and say, he said, "Oh shoot!" And that was 100% the call from Guidry, where you crash down, you scrape over, and if you scrape to that outside gap, I guarantee you, quarterback's going to be there. We're going to get the stop and win the game, and did. And I just think that he's dialed into the culture here. I think, he did a great thing by turning down LSU or the pursuit that was there, because, I know that they were trying to make inquiries, and he's a Louisiana native and everything. So interesting to see what he does necessarily on the recruiting trail, because like he kind of just took over after Adai left to the NFL on that. But heading right now, I think I would say Guidry, honorable mention Mirabal with the offensive line. And I think that there's a lot of coaches doing a lot of good work. I'm thinking Matt Merritt at the running back position already making his presence felt. Hall of Fame defensive end Jason Taylor obviously is a monster on the trail, and you can see guys getting better, like Ruben Hurricane Bain through last year. I think that there's a lot of guys. Derek Nicholson, on the recruiting trail and just developing these guys. I think that there are a lot of guys doing a lot of good work. Not saying that everything is perfect, not saying that everyone is the best assistant ever and they're going to get hired for a head coaching thing, because I know that the comments, especially when you get Florida State and Florida fans in there, they try to take things and extrapolate them to the terminal end of like whatever. No, I'm not saying all that, but I think there are a lot of guys doing good jobs. But if I had to list the number one option, it'd be Lance Guidry.
Folks, we have a Amazon link. It's in the description section of all the videos. And when you shop on Amazon, just please use the link that we provide. And it's the same shopping experience. It still keeps track of your account, still recognizes you. And I don't know how it does it, but it does it, believe me, and you will see. And you help contribute to the channel. The last I checked, I saw this statistic several months ago that Amazon is worth $1.8 trillion. If they just put that money to work, who knows? That probably is already $2.5 trillion, because the interest you could just earn on investments from that kind of gross money. So, hey, when you spend $100 at Amazon, and don't get me wrong, you don't have to spend $100 at Amazon. This is an example. Hey, you kick us at the Voice of College Football $3, $4. So please consider what we have in the description section with the Amazon link. If Cam Ward fulfills his potential, I'm talking about reasonable potential, he will be the best Miami quarterback since when?
I think the answer is, well, the easy answer. Well, no, not even. It depends on like what timeline you want to look at. If we're looking like really close, I mean, I know that he ended up getting injured at the end of the year and made like the next year wasn't as like the high notes weren't as high, but like De'Aaron King's season, his first year here, pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. After that, Brad Kaya, career leading passer, by the way, at the University of Miami, just throwing that out there, was pretty good for a college quarterback. No, he didn't have the professional, neither of them had professional careers or anything. Yeah, but in terms of like at Miami, I would say, yeah. I mean, yeah, De'Aaron King, Brad Kaya. If you wanted to say, okay, like we're extending it further than that, I mean, Stephen Morris was right before Brad Kaya, but they're pretty much they were analogous in terms of their accomplishments. They were very different players because Stephen Morris has one of the strongest arms that's ever existed on God's green earth. Past that, I mean, yeah, you're really looking back to when I was in college and Ken Dorsey, because there was a whole lot of Ja'Cory Harris, I think that he seemed to me maybe a little bit undervalued over the course of time. Had a lot of different offensive coordinators, but when he was with Mark Whipple, man, Ja'Cory Harris was darn good. So I mean, he would be in that pantheon since 2000 of Ken Dorsey, Ja'Cory Harris, Brad Kaya, De'Aaron King, of like, yeah. And I mean, look, I know that it ended poorly, and I know that he's shuttled off elsewhere. But that one season of Tyler Van Dyke, boy, after De'Aaron King got injured in 21, I mean, yeah, that COVID season with De'Aaron King, pretty damn elite. That 21 season from Tyler Van Dyke, I know it was not consistent. I know it did not continue. But woo, buddy, that was something special. So, I mean, if Cam Ward lives up to really either of those kind of performances, now he's a different kind of player than both, but yeah, he's at the top of the list, of recent quarterbacks. And I mean, as we go, there's been some decent quarterbacks. No, they haven't been everybody's All-American. No Miami quarterback is had that Vinny Testaverde Heisman season or anything. They haven't had the Cam Newton legendary season where, he just was the best player around and it wasn't even close. And he was just like, hop on my back, boys. I got this whole entire program. No, we have not had a quarterback like that. But yeah, Cam Ward could easily be one of the best quarterbacks that we've had in the last quarter century if he continues to play to the level that he has shown, and if he's able to dial some things in and improve his performance. And again, I'm going to make the comparison because of the performance scenario, not the player and player type. Okay, so what was done, not necessarily saying they're the exact same person, but at Incarnate Word and at Washington State, Cam Ward did not necessarily have as much talent around him as he has in Coral Gables. And so he had to increase his risk profile on some of the plays that he made because he had the talent. So I need to do more to try to make something happen. In a similar way to what Patrick Mahomes did in college with less talent around him, knowing, hey, I am the guy who has the talent. And so I need to maybe play a little bit more recklessly to try to hit the ceiling of my talent, because if I do that, then maybe I can elevate those around. And that came out through the NFL draft process. Like, they're like, yo, like, you're kind of reckless with the football and these things. And Mahomes was like, yeah, no, I had to, because like my offensive line wasn't necessarily the greatest and my receivers were okay, but like I had to kind of push the envelope and I had to try to get to the margins of what performance looked like to try to elevate everybody around. And I think that in a similar way, Cam Ward also had to do some of those things at Incarnate Word in Washington State. But now if he reels in some of that, pushing the boundaries performance and still can execute all these other things at a high level, yeah, I think he can be one of the best quarterbacks, or the best quarterback Miami has had in 25 years. But as I've said with all these other guys along the way, he needs to do it on Saturdays coming up this fall. and hopefully you tune in, and hopefully he does. And then it'll be fun to be in the press box and talking about great things instead of seething for days after stupid things like the Georgia Tech game.
The best I remember of De'Ara King in a Miami uniform was on a Thursday or Friday night in Raleigh-Durham against NC State,
Yeah.
when it seemed like everything he threw was dropped in a bucket. And on that particular night, Mark Pope and D. Wiggins decided to hang on to the throws for the most part. And I think they won like 44-41, and he had a ridiculous stat line, and it was beautiful.
Yeah, that, and I just always remember the one throw he made that game in the corner to Mike Harley, and then Harley like ran up the stairs into the stands because like they're very close to the field then. But that was at North Carolina State. 31 for 41 for 430 yards and 5 touchdowns passing. And I didn't even get to his rushing numbers, but yeah, and it was 44-41. Hurricanes win final. Yeah, that was pretty peak. Not gonna lie, that was pretty good to see. But I mean, like, dude, against Louisville, 18 out of 30 for 325 and 3 tutties, only 50%, but 4 touchdowns against Pittsburgh. Obviously, that game was the best, and 16 for 24 with 3 touchdowns and a 48-0 blowout of Duke. And that was the week before the game where we couldn't stop counter, and those 2 running backs are still running. But hey, yeah, he did a lot of good things, man. So I know that, like, yeah, asking that question thing is like, okay, we haven't had like a championship caliber quarterback really lead this team since Ken Dorsey, but we've had above average quarterback play. Hasn't been great, but like above average in a couple of instances along the way. And I think that Cam Ward can add himself to that list and maybe put himself to the top of the list depending on how he performs.